to the forum here, our civic affairs, and we're very, very fortunate to have the supervisor, Shea, with us this evening. And we have a smaller live audience because the contest is not happening. It's clear that Richard is running unopposed, and he will be our next supervisor as he is now, which speaks for itself. Because if people were not pleased with what he was doing, they would be voting with their feet in the other direction, and there would be active opposition. So I think it's not an endorsement specifically on my part, it's just the facts are what they are. And you've served now as a supervisor, and you're going to be reelected as supervisor. So I think the thing of most interest really to get questions from, or for me to have a conversation with Richard, is sort of the state of the town as he sees it to this date and going forward.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you for hosting the forum to Gordon, and thank you for coming out to everyone, and thanks for my wife and son Nolan for being here, and the entire town board. I know they love being out every night of the week. So, the state of the town is strong right now. I have to say that. When I first came into office, we were seeing revenues falling, and I don't want to just solely concentrate on the budget, but the budget is a big component of the responsibility of the supervisor and the town board. When I came in, mortgage rebate tax at one point was over $1 million. My first year, it was $240,000. So you had a 75% drop in your biggest source of revenue. Now, how you cope with that is, you have to look for cuts. And it was articulated earlier that you want to go across the board. You don't want to have anyone feel like they were singled out. So we asked for a 10% cut, and we got a 10% cut. It was an offer you couldn't refuse, but people worked with us. And there was a lot of grumbling, and I got some hate mail. And I did what I had to, though, because that put us back on a path to sustainability. At that point, we had a deficit in the A fund, and we were neutral in the B fund. And A fund is general town-wide, B fund is town outside village. The budget's kind of complicated. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I would say at this point, we've reestablished a fund balance in the A fund. We have a healthy balance in the B fund, and we are on excellent financial footing. All that while facing the biggest economic crisis anyone in this room has ever seen, and a crisis of natural disasters, back-to-back hurricanes and superstorms. We had destroyed infrastructure. The town had our rec department damaged. We had buildings damaged. We had roads damaged and destroyed entire sections of road. So immediately, the whole town board got on the job and didn't let up until things were set right. We got Senator Schumer to come to town and talk about being a squeaky wheel. Just called and called and called until he agreed to come. And what a great thing to get Senator Schumer here and the regional director from FEMA in your town at the time when your need is most dire. So we were fortunate, and that put us on a path to recovery. And since then, we've seen millions of dollars of FEMA funds come back into this town. It's been a constant job. You have to stay on top of that. It goes through a whole process. When you finally get what's called the blue folder, you have a project. But until that point, it's pretty much up in the air. They can deny you. They can segment projects, what they've tried to do. But we fought tooth and nail to make sure we get every dollar that this town deserves. And we're going to see the roads reopen. We've seen most of our roads, 95% of our roads are reopened at this point. Indian Brook was a tough road. We did have to prioritize, as you do with everything. But at this point, we're in really good shape. We're in good shape infrastructure-wise. We're in good shape financially. Also, we're in good shape relation-wise. We've built something. When we first started out with the zoning, there was a lot of contention. There was a lot of division. And trying to heal that division was part of the town board's responsibility, to reach out to people to say, this isn't the end. I think on both ends of the spectrum, people felt like, well, there's never going to be any more development. There's not going to be any business. And some people felt like, well, let's stop it now. Let's not have any more growth. We're good where we are. So at both ends, there was some misunderstanding. And I think we saw some of that in this past year, where we are still open for business. We do support businesses. We do also make the environment a priority, because what we have, our biggest asset in this town, is the environment. Without that, we won't have tourism, which is the business we are in. We have over 70 businesses on Route 9 that we support. When the zoning discussion started, I personally went up and down Route 9 to varying degrees of reception, sometimes getting booted out the door, but kept going back to assure people that, look, we're not trying to hurt your business. We're trying to help you, but we're also trying to sustain the entire town because it is a whole town. And I think people have seen that zoning document work over the past couple of years. Sure, we've hit bumps in the road, but we've seen that it is a balanced document and that it is working. It's working to protect the environment, it's working to protect businesses, and it's bringing the town together, not dividing it. We're not having these battles anymore. I left the other night, we passed 6 local laws on Wednesday night. 6. In the past, we would have had 200 people beating the door down to get in the room. But I think that level of trust has been reestablished where people see that we're not trying to slip anything by anybody. We don't meet in behind closed doors. We don't meet without the public. We don't meet anywhere that's not in full view and listen to the public. And regarding party politics, it doesn't matter. We have our arguments. We disagree regularly, which is healthy. We disagree vehemently sometimes, but we leave it behind. We function. We know we have to function as a board. I've been voted down on things that I felt passionate about, and that's good. And I've been knocked around the last couple of years. This board has really taken me to task. Anybody who's argued with Dave Moretti knows you're going to be up for a fight. You want to argue with Dave? But that's healthy. That's good. That's not about party politics. That's about everybody coming from a different perspective and bringing that to the town board. So I hate to bring party politics into a local thing like this. That's just divisive. We don't need that. We do have a good, healthy repartee at the board. We work together. At the end of the day, it's put to a vote, and we move on. We don't take it home with us. Sometimes people go home a little sore from that, but we move on, and we function well as a board. We have a really good board right now. So.
Well, it certainly doesn't resemble the national legislature at this point, which is less of a compliment than you all deserve, I'm sorry. Okay, so that brings us to where we are today, and you're running unopposed as a result. All right, but as someone once said about elections and voters, it's not really, this is very interesting. I can't remember who said it, but I've been very little in campaigns. Some of you may not realize that. I spent a lot of time in government, very little in campaigns, not very good at it. But I got dragged into one, and one really astute old political campaign veteran observed that an election for most voters is not really a referendum on the past. It's their bet on the future. It's one of the only times that a normal citizen has the possibility of affecting things that once the election is over are beyond their control. So they tend to want to bet on the future. They use the past to kind of make a guess how that might go. But what they're really doing is saying, what can I do in this voting booth to help myself and my family and the people I care about going forward? So let's shift for a minute and ask you, okay, now with all this experience, having been through all these things and having this situation as is today, what do you see going forward? What are you most concerned about, worried about? What keeps you awake at night? And what would you most like to see accomplished in the next 2 years?
Well, the town is always facing challenges. Excuse me. Again, it goes back to the budget. We have a limited amount of money, and we have to fund all these programs. Going forward, I heard Mike Bowman ask a question about Beacon, and I was feeling the same thing. I was feeling the same thing 2 years ago, and just saying this is a machine up there. And at that point, the idea of the Fjord Trail that we had been out campaigning on and visiting all our elected officials was really in its nascent stage. We'd gone around with the idea, did a feasibility study, and this is a trail that would tie Cold Spring to Beacon, a walking trail, a hike-bike trail that would be ADA compliant, so everyone could enjoy this. Because currently, if you go up Route 9D, it's a scenic byway, but you can't even see the river. So the idea came around to connect the two communities, saying connect them physically, connect them as far as commerce goes, and draw all the benefits that could come with that. We already have the tourists here. We have the people using the corridor, but we need them to come and stay. We need them to come and experience Cold Spring, and we need that connection to Beacon, which is a real engine right now. So over the past 2 years, I put a lot of work into that. We raised funds. I wrote a grant. It was successful for planning. So far, we've raised over $175,000. We're working with a steering committee to make this a reality. We just settled on a planner in the last week. So this is in the planning phase. It's gone from the feasibility stage to the planning phase at this point. That contract is going to be awarded to a planner. They're going to start working on that. That's going to be a physical plan for instituting this trail, implementing the trail. We've never worked closer with Fishkill. Bob Lacola up there is the new supervisor, a terrific guy. We've reached out to him, had a lot of interaction. We actually share some highway equipment occasionally. We work with Beacon. I've met the mayor up there in Casal, worked with him. But we do have a local citizens group that is really the core of this to get this idea of the trail up, because I think it's vital that we connect with Beacon in that way. Also, one of the biggest frustrations, and I hear from everybody, has been regarding the county. Why can't we get our share from the county? And you can go, to what I call the nuclear option. You could say, we're going to lodge a lawsuit against the county and see how that plays out in state courts. We're not at that point yet. I've tried to establish a better relationship with the county executive. She is one voice over there in a legislature which is heavily favored toward the other side of the county. Councilwoman Montgomery has been attending the meetings, the legislative sessions, and together we've sat down and tried to say, okay, how are we going to take incremental steps towards improving things here? How are we going to improve things for seniors right away? The food is lousy for the seniors. We've said it over and over and over. But recently we met with the head of the program, the hot lunch program for the seniors, the nutrition program, and the county executive, and just said, look, can't we improve the quality of the food as a first step? Because they're just saying, bring us a project. It doesn't matter whether it's money or resources. One equates to the other. So if you don't want to give us money, then give us the resources. Give us something. Give us the money, that we send over that we deserve back. So we've been working on, as a first step, improving the quality of the food for the seniors. We've also, on our own initiative, started a dual exercise program for seniors, and they're wildly popular right now. You're going to see seniors walking around with huge muscles. But I think as a step, it's just establishing those relationships and maintaining those relationships. And it's not just rhetoric at this point. We've been going over and reaching out to the county and putting pressure on them and saying, okay, we need to have a milestone. We're going to come and eat that food and make sure that it is better, because if it's not, we're not hitting any kind of milestone, and it is just talk. We don't want to get to a point where the relationship is so damaged that you can't even speak to each other. When they're talking about, and I'm going to go to Mike's question, the $9 million, what John's referring to is the overall tax dollar amount that leaves this community. That's property and sales. So sales tax fluctuates between $2.5 million, depending on the years. We've seen it to high. We go to the county and try to get an exact number and say, well, we don't break it out that way. That seems strange. Maybe convenient, but strange at best. So we'd like to know the exact amount of sales tax that is leaving this community along with the property tax. We know exactly how much property tax is leaving here. There's more property tax leaving this town than we collect in this town. So that's kind of shocking when you think about things. We do get services. We get valuable services. We get health services for seniors. We get health services for every individual in the town. The county does make our budget whole in the event of a tax shortfall where we can't collect the taxes. I understand that. But it still does not add up to the dollar amounts that are leaving this community. We do get the Putnam County Sheriff. That is a service that everyone values here. I don't think, and last week was a perfect example of saying, in a time where there's a crisis, you do want law enforcement. When we ask for something from the sheriff, we do get it. So I think going forward, we want to keep those relationships established and not break them down with, you can snipe at somebody, you can make these comments, you can go over and rail against the county. It's all running against a wall. I think at this point, what we have taken as a board is an incremental approach, is to say, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt one more time. We want to see milestones, and beginning with seniors. We want services over here for seniors, and we've had some good indications that that is going to happen. It's been a long time. One of my biggest frustrations and one of my biggest heartbreaks has been the lack of progress on seniors. I feel personally responsible. If there's one area where I feel like I failed, it has been to the seniors. It's not for lack of trying. I have tried over and over and over, but we cannot physically go and start strong-arming somebody at the county. What we are doing again now is taking an incremental approach. We do have a new county legislator. She has promised us that she's going to work harder for us. That is our conduit to the county. So we need to keep the pressure on Barbara and say, look, we need to hit some milestones here. We need to see the services come over. We need to see improvement for food. And also, the former legislator, Vincent Tamayo, is working on a transportation initiative. Whether that comes to fruition or not remains to be seen. But they're talking about it, maybe including us in the county bus line. At a minimum, running the trolley to a more useful location and making better use of that. So,
let's see if, since you have an opportunity to speak to the supervisor in an election context, so he has to answer you and all that he does anyway, but anything you want to ask Richard Shea while he's here and on camera? Yeah.
My friend here in the audience and I were just saying that we'd like to know if there's any way we can do something to reduce the amount of road salt that we use every day. Road salt. That's a concern.
Okay.
we use an ungodly amount of salt in this town. Anybody who drives a vehicle and watches it rot away knows that. When you see the roads white with not snow, but salt, and going halfway up the banks, something's not right. We have reached out to the highway superintendent on any number of occasions just saying, can't we try something else? And we have tried other things. We tried magnesium brines, which are less toxic to the environment. There's this balancing act going on. And I know the highway super feels the pressure of, he's got a responsibility to make sure there's safe travel ways. If someone gets in an accident, I'll tell you what happens right away. They sue the town. They come, we have people driving, they're driving 60 miles an hour down East Mountain Road North. They go over guardrail, we're in a lawsuit. It's a personal responsibility thing. I think we could cut our salt use tremendously. I think there are other alternatives. I think one of the things it would require would be a real information campaign going out to the public and saying, look, you're not going to be able to go out on the road at 40, 50 miles an hour after the last flake hits the ground. You can't. People used to carry shovels and sand, and people used to put snow tires on. Now I got these all-season radials. I'm racing around. It's a matter of the town doing its part, but also a personal responsibility of saying, I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to expect that 15 minutes after the last flake hits the ground, I'm going to be able to go out and fly down the road. But having said that, we do have school buses that need to get to some really remote locations. So it's a tough thing. We did cut our salt usage last year. I will say that. We were down about 15%. So we're building on that. I think we could cut our salt usage 50%. Because currently, in calculations, we cover every square inch of road in this town with about 6 inches of salt every season. We'll use 600 tons of salt in a single event. 600 tons. Not 600 pounds, not 6,000 pounds, 600 tons. Now that salt winds up in people's wells, winds up in waterways. It's a persistent pathogen, and we do need to work hard at that. I'm not the highway super. It's not my mandate. By state law, it's not my mandate. I can make these suggestions. I have cut budgets based on this, so that's the tool we use. But we do have a working relationship where we've had some cooperation. But I agree 100%. We need to cut salt use.
That does beg a question that I ask with no prejudice or anything at all. As I understand it, one of the other towns around moved to an appointed highway person that would be responsible and accountable to the town board. There are other views that having an independently elected person who's responsible directly to the people do you have a view on this?
It's a complicated issue. It's not just, go ahead and make it an appointed position. That's not something that you want to really fool with. You have to consider the implications. People vote for the highway superintendent, and voting is a right, and people like to have that right. Are you always going to get the best person in an election for a position that may require a certain skill set? That could be debated. It should be opened up for a public discussion if we're going to move that way. Of course, it would go to a referendum, so people would vote on it, and you would, in the end, understand how people felt about it. But it would take the town board to bring that up for a referendum, or a group bringing it in for a referendum. Right now, I don't have a strong feeling either way, I have to say. It's not as if you have no control over the position. And it's also not as if you don't have a working relationship with the person in that position. I haven't come down with a decision thinking that, well, we should definitely go this way. There are things that would make me lean that way, absolutely, but I don't have a considered or a definite opinion on that. But if I were asked, I would say I would lean that way.
So, for what it's worth, in my long desultory experience as a failed public government person, I can't honestly say that there's an a priori reason that an elected official versus an appointed official is per se better. Some have worked out better than others. So there's not a systemic inevitability. It becomes a matter of the people's preference and very often the nature of the situation. But one thing I would add a little observation on is it says something about what you were saying about the sense of responsibility in terms of accidents. The great shift, of which I was present for and a victim, when snow became not the result of something nature did, but the responsibility of a mayor, occurred, as many of you will remember, in a great snowfall when John Lindsay was in Florida. And ever since, mayors all over the country, including Washington, D.C. and other places, have come to be held accountable if there is more than a flake of snow and the slightest bit of inconvenience a day after a 2-foot snowfall. So you see enormous distortions in municipal budgets to prepare for this, because this will be the end of a morality if, God forbid, people should be inconvenienced by what God sent for more than 24 hours. We become spoiled and infantilized and turn to the courts instead of ourselves. I just can't help but say that because it influenced the course of my life. As John Lindsay said to me as we were leaving City Hall on December 31st at midnight, he said, well, you're about to find out what it was like to be a peacock today and a feather duster tomorrow. And I did. Is there any other questions people would like to ask of the guy where the buck stops? Yeah.
Yeah, question is, I just remember there's a question I've been thinking of asking, and it's related to salt and snow and danger in automobiles and so forth. One of my concerns has been pedestrian safety and bicycle safety. And so my question is there an avenue or a function where, let's say in any circumstance after a snowstorm, when the roads are particularly hazardous, or I'm thinking specifically along Route 9D, going between Cold Spring and Beacon or vice versa, when there's a tremendous number of pedestrians or other visitors, is there an avenue that the town has, or is this a state function that can temporarily reduce the speed limit?
All speed limit reductions come from the state. So we have petitioned, and part of the Fjord Trail initiative is to lower the speed reduction in that corridor, because that's an area, a prime example of what you're talking about. We have an incredible number of pedestrians, but also high-speed vehicle traffic. The speed was lowered there. You'll notice as you come out of Cold Spring, the speed goes from, I believe it's 25, and then once you get to the bottom hill, it's 40, and then at a certain point it becomes 55 again for a brief period. The idea is to lower that speed limit to 40 maximum through the whole corridor. I don't know how many, you know how people are. Not everybody pays attention to the speed limits. It could be sort of a cash cow for a while for the sheriffs that want to get in that corridor, post some police cars, and write some tickets. Around this town, that's been done when they talked about Route 9D south of the village toward the Bear Mountain Bridge. That was another area where we had a lot of people speeding through the area, and the sheriffs put in a bigger presence. They wrote a lot of tickets, and you did see a reduction in speed. You see much more adherence to the speed limits there. Route 9 is a different story. You know, it's a state highway. We do have the state police here. The sheriffs, anyone can write a ticket out there. Sheriffs can. We have 9 different police agencies in town, if you've ever counted them. But we have petitioned the state to lower the speed limits on certain roads and failed in the past. They've just said no. Councilman Van Tassel spent a long time working on that, and wasn't successful. It's not to say that we can't try again. We will try in the 9D corridor, and I think ultimately we will be successful there. But I agree that the vehicular traffic mixing with pedestrians is a real issue.
Other things anyone would like to? I just want to ask one other question. When you stressed an approach to the beacon phenomena that I think that we've all sort of acknowledged as a reality, is linking to them, and which makes a lot of sense. But there's a metaphor for tourism as a magnet, and I'm not sure we have a general magnet in the loveliness of the place and its historic character and the river, etc. Do you envision it possible for the town to think and develop, together with the village, a magnet of some kind? I mean, a hotel might be a start, but some idea is probably over the top. But is that a thought that has occurred to you and the town fathers and mothers?
It has. Again, we don't have a mandate per se in the village, but it's not as if, no one here is separated from the village. It's not as if we don't know the mayor, we don't know the village board. We know them all. I know Ralph Loon very well. I'm in his office once a week. And anything we can do to support the village is what we intend to do. One thing that came along several years ago was a project at the Garrison Golf Course, which involved a hotel. And something we do desperately need here. We have people coming here for weddings, and then they leave and go to Fishkill because we don't have the hotels. I don't know exactly why that didn't happen right away, but they have reapproached us recently, very recently, and said that they're considering the project again and actually would like to come back and apply for more rooms there because they've experienced a real boom in their wedding business and also just people coming up to stay there. What that does for Main Street and Cold Spring, I think it does translate. People don't just come here and stay out on Route 9. They go into the village and walk around. So anything that brings people to this town is a good thing. Anything that gets them to stay overnight is a good thing. I think ultimately you're going to see that hotel on the Garrison Golf Course. As far as a hotel in the village, who knows? Real estate is limited in the village. It's tough. And when you court development of any sort, you want to make sure it's appropriate in scale. And this is obviously been a debate that's been going on for several years now with regard to the Butterfield property. It's an opportunity over there for some sort of hotel, boutique hotel, rooms, some sort. Sure there is. Has that discussion happened? Not to my knowledge. But there are places to stay in town. Do we need more places? Yes. As far as just to again touch on the Beacon Cold Spring sort of relationship, they're two distinctly different communities. Beacon has a much longer Main Street than we have. They have a lot more business on their Main Street. So obviously they have much more opportunity for that sort of commerce. But we have something unique here. We have really the incredible scenic beauty. You can get to our waterfront, which you really have a tough time doing in Beacon. You can't, it's not all that pedestrian friendly. Long Dock Park they've been working on, which is very nice. You can launch a kayak there, but you can launch a kayak here. The thing we need to capitalize on is all these different modalities of transportation. We're going to talk about not just pedestrian, talk about the river as an alley of transport, and also bikes, doing bike share. If you had a bike share at the end of each trail, I could imagine people coming back and forth gladly. And you're not going to generally see somebody take a hike from Beacon to Cold Spring and back. If they come from Beacon, they're probably going to come down here and stay and eat one of our fine restaurants. But the idea of the Fjord Trail is to say, if we did this, there's going to be much more opportunity for those sorts of businesses, and it's going to encourage that sort of thing. There'll be more opportunity for hikers apparel or hiking gear, where we're going to get people opening up a sandwich shop, any number of things like that. It could be a huge boon. Take what's a net negative and turn it into 100 different positives.
I guess all could happen. So
it's going to happen.
So I think we're probably actually somebody told me, I think it was Bob McCaffrey, that Whistling Willie's was a hotel
at one point.
You guys have grown up here. Is that
the Hotel Manteo?
Yeah.
Not in our lifetime, though.
Yeah, but there you go. I mean, there was a hotel here, so there could be a hotel here.
Yeah, there could. I mean, a small hotel. You look at the Pig Hill; it's almost set up like a small hotel.
Yeah. Well, okay. So with this, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but some of the old New York City cops used to refer to those places you were referring to not as cash cows, but as fishing holes. So we'll see how that works out. In the meantime, best of luck going forward, and you'll have a town board to work with. work around, and it'll have its dynamic whoever's on it, and our civic faith, I think, is well served by all of you, and I'm grateful for all of you for being here tonight.
All right. I look forward to serving for another 4 years. It is a complete honor, and I'm humbled by the fact that people have elected me, 2 times. Running unopposed is strange in many ways, but it's also an indication that people are satisfied with the way things are going in town, and that is gratifying for me. The board, again, does the lion's share of the work. They make my job, this new board makes my job a lot easier. If you look at all the projects that are being done, Councilwoman Montgomery through work with the county and recreation and seniors, and Councilman Morandi with infrastructure jobs. Right now, working on a huge boiler project at Rec. All on a part-time basis. If you look at Councilman Van Tassel, all he's done with the emergency services, setting up an EOC on his own with no town funds, just getting this thing done. And Betty Budney, you can't say enough. There's a person who's just been this pragmatic workhorse for 25 years, and without the work that's done like that, you would notice things. People, they may not notice the services that are being provided, but if they weren't there, you would notice. So I just want you to really appreciate the town board. They're a great group. I'm, fortunate to work with them, and completely happy right now. So,
well, before the deserved compliments go to your head too much running opposed, you might consider the possibility that looking at what is entailed, a number of people here have thought to themselves, I wouldn't do that in a million years. So we're kind of lucky that we have 5, 6, 7, 8 people who are willing to step up and do that. And no matter what we're feeling about them day in, day out, I think we should be very grateful that they're willing to take this on. The pay ain't great, and I've not seen motorcades and fancy low number license plates and stuff like that. So for what they get for what they give, we're getting a bargain from all of these folks, candidates and elected officials.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.